passionate about Cleveland sports.
He's going in! Touchdown!
Browns, Indians, Cavs, the Big Ten, and more.
Cleveland is a city of champions once again!
Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond.
Swing it line! To deep right!
Here are your hosts, Andy Billman and Jarid Watson.
And we are live on Facebook and YouTube. Hello and welcome, Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond. He's Andy Billman. I'm Jarid Watson, and this podcast is brought to you by Waiting for Next Year. Check them out, original Cleveland sports reporting at waitingfornextyear.com. Well, on this episode, we want to start things off with a special guest, a thorn in the side of Major League Baseball, as I like to call him, son of Indian skipper Terry Francona. Nick Francona joins us, and we're going to talk a little bit about his opinion regarding the Cleveland Indians, their name, their branding, some things that Andy and I have talked about over the past couple of episodes. And Nick's got his own take, and he was just featured in his own article in GQ magazine not too long ago. You can find that on the Facebook page. Nick Francona, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Nick, you are no... well, let's see. How do we even put this? You are no stranger to Major League Baseball. You were a kid. You were a pitcher. You threw a hell of a fastball, and then had a little bit of an injury, so it didn't play out like your grandfather and your father. But you stayed in touch with the league and worked for the Dodgers and the Mets. But you saw things within the league that you weren't a big fan of, and you didn't hesitate to talk about them. Now here we are. And you're talking about the Indians and the conversation that everyone's having right now regarding the name changes. What was it that made you feel like you were going to be able to have this discussion and hopefully not ruffle your dad's feathers too much?
Well, I'd say that the not ruffling the feathers was not necessarily like I think anybody that's paid attention is that it frankly probably did ruffle some feathers there. Yeah. But to a certain degree, I don't want to say that's necessarily the goal, but that's an expected collateral damage. And
right.
I'm perfectly fine with that. It's a topic that I've been talking about at various points over the years with different people around the league and with the team. And it was something that I thought that they had. I was a little surprised by kind of how passive they've been on the issues. I thought that even just from a cynical business perspective, my view on it was that and literally if they just even took the moral elements aside and purely cared about their own organization. This was something that it really felt like if you got outside the insular bubble of baseball, that this was going to be inevitable. It might have been I'm talking about kind of back in 2016 now, this might have been happening a year from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, but it was going to happen one way or another. And how you got there, I felt really mattered. And if you were filing court documents and digging in against it and kind of getting dragged, kicking, screaming, and just trying to be a little less of a jerk off than Daniel Snyder, that's just not a great look. And so I thought that it might be okay to be a little inefficient in the sense of you might have to give this up a little bit before you have it forced upon you, but the benefits from that are far going to outweigh the downside. And where I think they in my opinion, and I talked about this in the article, and where I think they really went wrong was in trying to really have it both ways the whole time. And that's the part that I think bothers me the most, is that if you look at the kind of both sidesing language and that type of thing, it's damn near identical to the stuff you hear defenders of the Confederate flag use and stuff. And I actually I don't blame the average fan one bit. I really don't, because I don't think there's a lot of malicious intent there. And I think I explained that in the article about how I grew up viewing it, and it wasn't different than any other baseball team in my opinion. Yep. And I think where you have a problem is to be in this day and age and have the team almost like continue to foster that and for the wrong reasons, it really brings out the worst of the fan base. And finally, what I told them shortly before when I was in the last couple months when I was engaging on this more was if you look at the people that are out, there's a reason they don't engage in these conversations all that openly. And it was frustrating that they didn't. But then when I thought about it more, it's the people that are engaging it openly, it's you have that girl from InfoWars who's out there interviewing people outside Progressive Field about it. And it's hard you can have an honest conversation. You and I could sit here and discuss this and disagree about it and have a really earnest conversation about it. And it could be totally genuine, and we could have that conversation with a variety of fans. When you introduce the side of we can't say this, but what's really happening is we actually want to keep profiting off of this, so therefore we can't tell the truth. You just look like a jackass pretty quickly, and you can't even have an honest conversation about it. So then you create this vacuum, and the people that fill it are the InfoWars types, and you start going down a bad path really quickly there.
The article is great for people who haven't read it. It's in GQ, and it's worth the time to read. Nick, the quote that really got to me was Mr. Smith from the Smithsonian.
That was awesome.
That was a great quote. And I think you were kind of touching upon it there in your first answer. And we've talked about on this podcast. I go, and you kind of hit on it too. It's in the 90s when the Indians took, and I'd even say starting back with the movie Major League, where really Wahoo became a part of it. It really did. You don't really remember it so much in the mid 80s, but I was born in 79, but you definitely felt it in Major League. And it, obviously when the Indians took off in the mid 90s, it took off and, we all wore it. And so I think you're right. And I thought that quote, the bonds between a city and its sports teams are really deep and profound. When I see sports fans defend their mascot, even though it's a racist character like Chief Wahoo, what they're really defending is his generations and commitment to that city. And to follow up on that, I want to ask your question, Nick. I love that because I think he's right. I think it's more about the memories. It's not Chief Wahoo. No one's defending that. At least I believe. But I think more of it's the memories of those teams or those moments with your dad or your mom or your sister or all that kind of stuff. Can you speak upon that? So you kind of touch upon it, but I want you to expand your answer. Do you feel like that might be one of the bigger problems with Wahoo and the name Indians in a way, is the feelings and memories?
Yeah, and I thought that quote, the Paul Chat Smith, I thought the way he described the dynamic was just brilliant, and that it really distilled it down to its essence. And I think I would have elaborated on it a little more too, in that I think there's this kind of inherent discomfort that comes with people don't like the idea of the things, if you take what he said as a starting point, and we have these kind of nostalgic notions about and generally good feelings and pride associated with the team and hanging out with friends and family watching games, and might have a poster or t-shirt or hat like I did, and probably half the people in Northeast Ohio do. That there's probably an inherent sort of you get your back up a little bit when you see somebody saying talking about the problems, and this is a racist caricature, and trying to kind of reconcile that disconnect between I don't like being called a racist, but somebody is attacking this thing, and people get defensive about that. And I think that when you kind of start to both sides the issue, it exacerbates that divide. And I think what I would view it as is trying to separate, look like your good feelings and all the stuff about that isn't contingent on that logo. That stuff's still all going to exist. And I think trying to have the empathy to understand that just because you might have been benign in your intent with this and never were malicious in terms of I wasn't sitting there trying to be a racist and cause anybody harm by supporting the team that I love. Recognizing that that there might have been some unintentional effects there,
right?
And just having the empathy to listen to other people. And I think that's where I think that's part of the problem. The more you break this down, is that there's a reason that there's only one group of people that we do this to in our country, and it's not an accident that they're the most marginalized ones. No, we don't see other groups of people that are like, and we can talk about how much of an honor it is. And I use that term intentionally mockingly in that, like, there's like how much, where's that honor gotten them? Like, is that like, if only like, we don't honor every other group that way. So like America, when the Indians were named in 14 or 15, like we weren't exactly in the business of like throwing around like honorifics to marginalized groups.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that, with that group being the most marginalized. And I think that it's so marginalized that this country, there's a lot of, like, we recognize the marginalization of African Americans in this country, right? We understand that at least on the surface. With Native Americans, it's a different issue, and it's a lot less known. There's certain things. Hell, I take a multicultural counseling course last semester, right? And some of the things that I learned in that course opened my eyes to things about Native Americans that, as much as I knew they were as marginalized as they are, I had no idea some of the horrendous treatment and horrendous, things that happened via the U.S. government in regard to Native American children being taken from parents and put into schools that would teach them how to, basically be more American and have them adopted by white parents. And I mean, very awful things that we just don't even know a lot about in this country. And that takes me to this. Within the article, you touched on something. It's what made me want to reach out to you to see if you wanted to come on, Nick, is the idea that this is something that cannot be swept under the rug. You can change your name all day, but you don't really have the right to do that without having Native Americans have a seat at the table with you. I've always thought that there's an opportunity there for the Indians to redesign branding around those conversations and to keep Native Americans. And if you say that you want to go down the honoring Native Americans history of the team name, then actually do something to honor them. And let's see what kind of conversation the team can have. And I saw that Tom Withers had just released some news that the Indians that the team is planning now to sit down with Native Americans in this conversation. What do you have to say to that, Nick?
So I would say there's probably a big difference in the theory and the practice of that. In that, one of the things that stood out to me, probably this might be like the most kind of impactful like explanation that I've heard was I posted a video a couple weeks back, and this was, I believe it was from 1994, and it was one of the individuals talking was pretty prominent. He's since deceased, but Russell Means is a prominent Native American activist. And what Mr. Means was talking about was this idea of the host had asked him about, well, if Chief Wahoo goes away, what about the name? And it was kind of jarring to watch that, because for one, you hear like the Chief Wahoo stuff is not new. The people asking about the name is not new. It's just, it was easy to ignore and not listen, which is essentially what happened for so long. So to hear that being discussed really like so passionately that long ago was really jarring in itself. And then he made a really profound point about the team name, is that when you have teams named like this, you're going to essentially give license to the fans to, whether it's the Braves doing the tomahawk chop or fans in Cleveland coming in with red face and headdresses. And it's really hard to separate those kind of things. And I think the pitfalls that you run into is in looking at kind of how Atlantis tried to navigate this recently, is that it really seems like there's this approach of not necessarily genuine engagement and more like shopping around to find somebody who will agree with you. And I think there's a lot of issues that raises, and that one, like, people will cite the idea of not every Native American is offended by these or takes offense to it, and great, like, they're not a monolithic group like any other group of human beings,
right?
And to like expect them to be such is like pretty ridiculous. But to ignore that there are some hundreds of tribes, tribal governments, the majority of them, National American Indian Congress, like the largest, most representative group, like hundreds of activists. I mean, this is by no means a fringe group within Native American voices that have been calling for change and calling for a long time. So to kind of ignore those and focus on the ones that you want to hear that are going to tell you what's most convenient for you as a business, I think is a little disingenuous. If people were going to be open to genuinely having those conversations, I think that would be awesome. But I think what that would require is either way, you're going to end up in the same place where you're going to have that the rubber's going to meet the road when you have to explain to your fans, hey, I like coming to the stadium and banging drums while whooping and hollering and wearing red face is like, it's not cool anymore. And having that conversation while still trying to hide behind the, like, yeah, we'll sell Chief Wahoo hats, but maybe not in Arizona. And we maybe not like on our official website, but like, if you want it, you can find it. So like there's a disconnect there, and they just need to figure out how they're going to approach it. Whether it's like if you want to be honest about it, like I'm sure they could do some great things, and what's on the table becomes like you open it up to infinitely good possibilities if you just like kind of reduce the motives of like trying to have it both ways and not really be genuine about it.
Yeah.
So Nick, I think all this change is good. I think we've talked about on the show. I think the name needs to change and everything else. Let me ask, looking forward, I think the good thing is, at least my vote, I want to get your opinion. I think there's some healing that can be done and some fences that can be mended. Am I naive? Because I think this can, like, going through all this changes, there's going to be some other changes that need to happen too, for sure. But I think there's some chances from real positivity in getting the Native American community involved and really making some good out of this. Am I wrong? Do you think I think that's really possible here in future months and ahead in years to come?
I would agree with you. And I think that's not only possible, I think that's like if people are mature and responsible about this, I think that's a likely outcome.
Yep.
I think that was really like one of the main points of the article, is that I wanted to kind of make a more nuanced point than is possible to do with the limited characters on Twitter. And by talking about the way that this is handled is just as important as the ultimate decision in itself, and that you could get rid of the name and make it seem like, oh, like this is like screw the woke mob here that is like protesting. They're a really small group, and like we have to give in to them, but like be as rowdy as you want and have at them. And then if you do that, you're going to direct a lot of anger towards the people. And we've seen that before. It's not a hypothetical. Like there have been some ugly moments outside of that stadium.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. I don't think by any stretch that's the majority of the fans, but it would also be naive to dismiss that as isolated. And so I think that's the kind of thing that the team actually, in the way they frame the conversation, it does have a lot of influence and control over, and that this is an opportunity to provide some moral leadership, and set the tone going forward. And I think on the positive side, one of the I received a lot of really nice messages from people throughout in different parts of Native American or different tribal governments, different Native American activists in recent weeks. And one of the really like heartwarming messages I got was from a woman in Cleveland and she started by just emphasizing like, it'll be nice when we can enjoy the team just like everyone else in the city. And that's really cool to see. And
that's cool.
There wasn't this bitterness with it. There wasn't all things considered, like I think one of the things that I would implore the team to think about is like, these have been relatively peaceful and quiet protests, and like don't send the message that like because they're peaceful and dignified that this is like something to be ignored, because you sent a really bad message at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you go down that road of empathy that is absolutely needed in this conversation. And I would add to that cultural humility is another the part of this discussion that needs to be, elevated regarding the fact that, the men making these decisions are, people can hate the word. And I think a lot of people don't like the word because they don't necessarily understand its meaning, but having the privilege, these are rich white men who have the privilege of making these decisions. And I think that the more cultural humility that they can show and empathize, the better this process will be, because, there's no reason to hide this or shove it under the rug, Nick. They can look at this and add it as a part of the history of the team. This is what happened. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. We talk about it all the time. There's nothing to shy away. There's nothing to shy away from. This is our history. This is our past. It is not the greatest. And it's that way throughout all of American history. We are so afraid of anything in this country right now that seems to, be adverse to what we all believe this country could be. But it absolutely is not. And it is not. And because we are so afraid to look at in an honest light the history that this country has had. And that's throughout its beginning to now, and just the disenfranchisement of marginalized groups, and thinking that because you don't have any problems with things that automatically means no one else should either. And it's just not fair. We're not showing our ability to put ourselves in other people's shoes. And I really hope we get to that point. And I am glad that out of, everything, we can talk back to this. This all really picked back up again with George Floyd. And I think you mentioned that in the GQ article. And I will say this, the Indians were very fast to, at least from a media perspective, to come out and say, we're ready to change this. I can maybe right. I understand. Yeah. You see, I know you see things
when you're attacking behind, you know what I will say, that we'll say this. I'm trying to figure out the right way to say this.
No, that's fine.
It's a hard.
I know you know things that we don't.
There is like this dissonance that I feel with it, because on the one hand, like I, to my core, believe that these are it's one of the better run organizations in all of professional sports. Mm-hmm. And I think there are really good people there who are thoughtful and doing the right thing. And at the same time, as I've told them, you guys are head in the sand, could not be more dicked up on this topic than you've been for 50 years. And you need to unscrew yourselves pretty quickly. And they have this massive blind spot. And I remember just one conversation after we're trying to get light a sense of urgency there. And it was, they were we're busy doing the draft. And it's guys, that is the wrong answer. There are cities on fire right now. You need to put your head on a swivel and look around a little bit. But what, Jared, the point you made, I think, is really profound in the way you described it with cultural humility. And I think that's a good way to tie this up more generally, in that in this topic specifically, it is among the most really uncomfortable topics to discuss. Because think about all the things that are, think about all the values that are so really ingrained in your soul, in the military, and the things that we're proud of you and I have both worn the uniform, and when it's this is America at its best, and you believe in those things, and it's impossible to reconcile that, and that generations ahead of us, we basically had people who served and wore that same uniform, more or less committing a genocide. And it's really hard to reconcile those values. But I don't think sweeping it under the rug and pretending it didn't happen. And I mean, this is one of America's original sins, and we can either continue to bury it and pretend it didn't happen and perpetuate injustices, or hopefully peel the Band-Aid off. It's gonna cause some people to be very uncomfortable, but this is where we need to do a better job, and everyone is going to be better off. We can be truer to our values. We can right some injustices and be a more perfect union when we act this way.
Yeah, you can proudly wave the flag, as a lot of folks love to do. They love to wave that flag, and understand that we're not perfect, and we weren't. It goes back to, and I think that, I said it off air, I believe, Nick, you're the type of person, if anyone knows about your previous stints with the Dodgers and with the Mets, and we won't get into it all now, you don't have a problem with speaking truth to power. And at times, like I said, to your own detriment, where you have put yourself on the line, your career on the line, to stand for things that you believe in these ways, and just to get some eyes to open. And I feel like institutional accountability is something that I always go back to. And I feel like the way that we handle this within our own institutions, by expelling rather than protecting what we know to be wrong, will only strengthen those institutions. Yet we have come to a point where we feel like we all need to dig in and, pardon the pun, protect our tribe in a way that is actually detrimental, because we are not basically exercising these demons.
Yeah, you close yourself off from feedback. And I mean, the classic example that you see with that is look at like the difference between like good military units and bad ones. Of like, there's a very fine line there between camaraderie and like, let's go do some war crimes. Right. Or, or even let's just talk about college days stuff and joining a fraternity. And there's a very thin line between, building fraternity and hazing the shit out of someone. Right. Yep. It's the same conversation. Human nature, brother. That's all I can say with that. I really enjoyed this. And the way you guys are talking about this is awesome. And I think it's, I would credit you guys for having an inclusive conversation about it and just challenging your own beliefs, challenging your listeners, and approaching it with some humility on all sides. And I think this is like certainly productive, and everyone's going to benefit from the way you're framing this.
I appreciate that. I'm going to transition real quickly to one thing. And there's no good transition. You are based in Boston. You seem like a lovely man. I love your dad.
I knew you were going to do this, Andy.
I fucking hate the Red Sox. I really love, though. I lived in Connecticut when your dad in 2004 happened, and it was lovely. But wouldn't it be fucking cool if the Cleveland Baseball Organization won in 2020 and just brought that trophy home? You kind of mentioned in the article, and I liked it. You slid it in there nicely. I liked it. And I wanted to ask you, are you more Cleveland or more Boston? And how great, and talk about this, how great would it be to see Cleveland win it this year in baseball?
I think that's what hurt so bad in 2016, I think, is that, Boston is like those are some, you can't really replicate, like they're like, whether it's the Cubs, Yankees, Red Sox, you're talking about like really iconic franchises. Mm-hmm. But there was I don't think I've ever it would be another level, just kind of, I think for my dad personally winning in Cleveland. And that's why I think, especially that year was in 16 was pretty cool. And that they were written off going into the playoffs and then kind of steamrolled their way to the World Series and before things went downhill. But it was, it's, they do so many things well there. And that's why, that's what I keep coming back to with this name thing. It's like, guys, just don't you want to do you guys are so good at this, just don't you want to focus on that and stop dealing with this and do the right thing?
That's the $1 million question. And it's a hard thing, right? Leadership's hard and change is hard. You combine the difficulty of leading with the difficulty of making some real change, and you've got yourself a whole lot of difficulties ahead, unless, again, if you just stay focused on the fact that, right is right and doing the right
that's
thing.
The key is think about go if you go back and look at the civil rights era and talk about late 60s and the moderates, the senators that were supportive but were really moderate and were yeah, I want to be on your side, but I'm afraid a lot of my constituents are borderline racist and might vote me out of office. I don't want to anger them. Does that kind of sounds familiar right now to the rhetoric that you saw a few years ago with the team talking about Chief Wahoo, and frankly the rhetoric yesterday about the fans as one stakeholder and balancing it out and weighing all the considerations. And you don't have to be that far removed from it for like those statements to be pretty cringeworthy, and they never age well. And like when you get to these like fundamental like ethical and moral issues, like you have to speak with some moral clarity, and the right answers aren't coming from putting 7 lawyers and spin doctors in a room together and kind of bastardizing a statement until it doesn't offend anyone. Like you need to tell uncomfortable truths and simple truths and just embrace them.
I mean, let's look at it this way. In 10 years after this change, right? If this change happens now, in 10 years, new fans, kids who love baseball aren't going to give 2 shits that we changed our name and got rid of the Chief Wahoo logo. It's not going to make them turn their nose up and say they're not going to the ball field and blah, 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 blah. And all the threats.
And
all
if Alex Jones is still crying about it, then I'll be the first one to tell him to go fuck himself.
Listen, I don't know how his ass is. Yeah. Fluoride in the water. Anyway. I can't deal with it, but it is what it is. Well, I really appreciate you joining us, Nick.
Thanks,
you're welcome
Nick.
back anytime. Obviously, we're looking forward to watching the game start up tonight, and really wish your father and the team well this year because for Andy and I know this, there's no asterisks. If they can win this fucking thing,
it will mean everything.
Yes.
Everything.
Yeah, I hope for the city. It's awesome to see how much the city gets behind that team, and you just have that feel. It's impossible to miss that feeling of how much it would mean to everyone there. So I would love to see that for them.
Nick Francona, son of Tito Francona, Indian skipper, and also, as I like to refer to him, thorn in the side of Major League Baseball. You keep speaking truth to power, Nick, and keep doing your thing. Love having you on, and we really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Jared. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Take care. Nick. Great job.
Bye.
There you go.
That's a lot, man. I'm glad that we had that conversation. I'm glad that he wrote that article, and that it's not just us. There's a lot of folks that feel the same way, that it's just time. That's all. And we understand. I get it. I still have my Chief Wahoo tattoo. It's going to change once the COVID stuff dies down. I'm changing it. But it's time. It's time, and that's fine.
It is time. And again, I think that quote, Nick, you and I talked about it. It's very understandable. The memories, especially in our generation, especially when the Indians were being successful with the popularity of Major League, that Chief Wahoo was everywhere. And we need to remember what you guys said, and I'll echo, which we said last week. It's not that. It's the team, and it's the memories with your family. We're not taking that away when Indians and Chief Wahoo goes away. The memories are still there. It's all positive stuff. It's all good stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff, again, you said it well. It's not that we're erasing it. It's just that we're correcting it and making better change for better people in life. Yeah. And that's really the key to all this. Jared alluded to it. There was actually a press statement too made out by the Dolans, and they are sitting down with Native Americans. They're sitting down with other key people in the city and in the community. I will say, you touched upon it, and so did Nick there a little bit. I think since in the last 2 weeks, the Indians have really stepped up and done a nice job of moving forward with this. And I will say we can go back in the past, and it's easy to point out the mistakes. I will say in the last 2 weeks, Jared, I've seen a lot more positive movement from the Indians organization in moving forward, and they seem to be moving in the right direction. It's not, I don't think it's as rapidly as some would want, including me and you probably.
Yeah, it's at the speed of corporate, Andy.
And that you said it well. That is exactly right there, ladies and gentlemen. It is the speed of corporate. And there's also a lot of people, not to get too entwined, it's boring. There are so much money made into this, you can't even get it. It's unreal. That plays a part of it too. There's a lot of that involved in this too. And whether that's right or wrong, it's a big fact of it. All right. In about an hour, a team's going to take the field, and they're going to play the Kansas City Royals. And I'm excited about the Tribe and Royals today. The rosters, everything's been locked up, everything else. Here's the big things I took out of these 3 preseason games, and I was into all 3. I didn't really get to watch the first one so much. I was all over game 2 and game 3, and I listened to the entire game 3 on an MLB app with Pittsburgh radio. So that's how involved I was in this. It was painful, but they're much nicer than the Steelers announcers. So all that to be said,
or whatever he used to say.
Yeah. Here's a couple of things that there's really only one, but the rest was really positive.
Yeah.
The team, you can go down the lineup of the starters. Santana hit a home run in the last preseason game. Frankie hit a home run. J. Rams has been looking good. All the hitters have really been on pace so far. Roberto Perez is really the only one I can think of who really didn't stroke any time of like a bat or anything like that. All that to be said, I mean, really the Indians lineup is way ahead of the – and by the way, this is a team that's filled with pitching, and the lineup and the hitters are actually ahead of the pitching right now. You can feel it. So it says a lot about where the Indians are at. You can tell the Indians are feeling good about the lineup and stuff. The starting pitching is going to be there. Clevenger is definitely still a work in progress. I will warn that now. Right. I would not be surprised if he gets roughed up in the Royal Series. I think he is still working to get to where he needs to be. All that to be said, if you want what's the one thing that's looming? It's this bullpen. Jared and I have been texting about it. It's Captain Obvious. I said it 2 weeks ago, and I said it in the last podcast, and I'll say it again. Brad Hand especially. And Brad Hand's doing great things in the community, and I love Brad Hand as a person. But on the mound and as a talent, it's scary right now with him.
We've already discussed it that the Indians must be setting Karinchak up. There's no reason why they would have him closing the last 2 games in a row, and that makes sense because this is already a sign. This is exactly what we talked about. Tito is not going to sit and wait. He's not going to sit and wait. And he hasn't even sat and wait when it comes to this lineup tonight, Andy.
No.
When we look at the fact that Jose Ramirez is not in the 4 spot, that Carlos Santana's bumped there, and that Jose is in the 2 spot, you can tell that things are already being tweaked, and the way that they're going to need to do things is to stay on it and be ready to make more changes if needed. And they're already doing that as well, especially when we're looking at Naquin. They were able to adjust things so that they can bring I can't remember who they brought up to take care of things for Naquin. Naquin, this one bums me out a little bit. He's got a foot issue, isn't it? I'm not looking at the note.
He's going to be okay. He is going to be okay. Luplo's tonight batting business a lefty Duffy, but it's going to be but Naquin,
and in the 6th hole. So that's even for Luplo, that's.
Well, he's going to get protection from Santana is probably their thought. And then Oscar also batting 9th is not because he's the 9th best hitter on the team. He's not.
It's gorgeous having him back there.
Total protection. All right. Another thing I want to bring up is Cesar Hernandez.
Yep.
Hernandez can stroke it, folks. He is really, really good. He is a battler. He does not strike out easy. He does not strike out very much at all. We talked about that initially when we signed him. People were lost when they were complaining about this signing. Lost. He is a good leadoff. It actually sets the table for this lineup a lot. And in fact, I think it's playing a big reason why the Indians are set up for success. I think he's going to have a big year. This is only a 1-year contract, but this is going to be a 1 year of fun for him. I am really excited about him. Already seeing his initial at-bats, Jared, in that one preseason game and seeing other highlights, he is going to be a great table setter, and that is going to set the tone, and it takes the pressure off Frankie and or Oscar Mercado. That's really the only 2 guys you can see batting leadoff, and that's great that he's doing that.
Well, we needed him to do that, for one, because we knew that second base spot was going to be an important role for whoever came in, and for 2, because we're seeing already that the guy who just left, his first at bat with the Cubs was a home run. So that
Kipnis is a Chicago guy, by the way. So if he has a big year in the Cubs, and by the way, that's good for Kipnis. That's good for the game.
Right,
There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. I know it's the Cubs, and I can't stand the Cubs at all. But look,
it feels like a Browns move, though. You know,
it is. But that was the right move. Actually, I'm going to say that all year long.
Absolutely, because the same people that were bitching that he's hitting a home run, and the same people that probably wanted him out of here.
Look, it's like the trade with OBJ. That was the right trade. That's still the right move. Everything that happened there is still the right thing. For people who haven't seen, here's your starting lineup for tonight. Hernandez, we just talked about. J. Rams in the 2 holes, Jared mentioned. Lindor's batting 3rd. I think that's going to be his spot in the lineup the whole year. Carlos Santana batting 4th. Franmil Reyes 5th. Luplo, again, because it's a lefty tonight, will be batting 6th. Domingo Santana is going to be in right field. Your DH is Reyes. They basically alluded to by Tom Hamilton and others, the vibe they got from the team is, because Reyes did not get enough chances in right field to play the outfield, he's going to be more of a DH than Santana. Originally, they were going to flip it, but they just didn't think he had enough playing time. Roberto Perez is going to be your catcher all year, and Oscar Mercado's in center field. Now, the other big stories we talked about in the last podcast, Chang did make the team. He should have made the team. He had a great year. I'm excited for Zimmer. Zimmer made the team. Others are Mike Freeman, Christian Arroyo. Greg Allen I bet you Greg Allen was the last guy to make this team. The really only notable that did not make the team to me was Jake Bowers. And I thought it was the right move. Jake Bowers has really not made an impact in these games. He had one home run in these exhibition games, but Jake Bowers seems like a nice guy. So it's not about the person. It's just the talent. Well, these other guys are playing better right now.
We know that Tito gave him a little more time than maybe he should have to try and make something happen, and he was able to get away with it.
Yeah.
Can't get away with it this year. No time for it. And if it's not working out, it's not working out. Andy, what do you think, too? I want to jump into this, too. And again, I have not been looking at the notes. Andy knows that I've been running around like a chicken with my head cut off today. The expansion of the playoffs to 8 per league.
Okay.
I love it because I think in a shortened season, you're not getting a good vibe yet for some teams that could be on the cusp and would have made a move had there been 162. That's my view on it. I think that makes it a more honest and true road to the World Series. What do you say?
Look, if the Indians don't make this, the Indians were never going to be anything this year because all the Indians have to do is finish second place.
That's it.
I mean, that's all they got to do. It takes a lot of pressure off games like tonight. It takes a lot of pressure off moments when the Indians are going to hit the skids, which will happen. It's going to happen. It takes a lot of moments off that. I agree with Jared. I actually tip them off to say this might be the way to go from here on out. So here's the basic setup of it. They announced it during the middle of the rain delay. Gosh, poor baseball can't get a break. Their opening day game, and they get poured with rain. By the way, note to them real quick, start playing games throughout the whole day. Just to put them out.
Dude, listen, they're already having issues with blackouts and who they're going to let see shit regionally. Look, that's another conversation.
I mean,
this is me the fuck off to no end.
Baseball's had a hard time with this, and they got to get their act together next time. And they just haven't. Anyways, so here's the basic premise: 8 teams from both leagues. If you're in first or second place, you're in. After that, it's going to come clearly down to record and tiebreakers. No playing games. The playing game days are over, which is good. They don't need that this year anyways.
No, those games are annoying anyways.
They're very, very annoying. So it's going to go wild card series round, division series, league championship, World Series. It goes like this. The wild card series, all 3 games are played by the higher seed team in their home park. It's a best of 3. So it's like the College World Series stuff. So you get 3 games. The winner moves on. Division series will be your typical best of 5, best of 7 for the on out. Now,
it's like growing up, man. I'm sorry, I love it. It's like when I was a kid playing.
Here's the one fact for everyone out there who is wringing their hands in nervousness. This sets up well for the Indians because you have Bieber, Clevenger, Carrasco. If you're in a 3-game series, no one can match up with those guys. No. Even the mighty Yankees, who are looking really good, which is really annoying, but they do look really good. All that to be said, I will take their 3 over our 3 any day of the week on the mound. So you already have that advantage. So that is a huge thing. The wild card series round is going to give the only breath in this season for a team like the Yankees, because watching early baseball, I hate saying it, that team's going to be a runaway.
You mean you take our 3 over their 3?
Right? I mean, right. The Yankees, right? Our 3, because Tanaka's out. I mean, Garrett Cole's Garrett Cole. He's very good, but Bieber can match up with Cole. And after that, really, it's not bad, but it's not great. And the Indians have Clevenger, who could win the Cy Young. Carrasco, who's been in those runnings too. Those are 3 guys, and we know behind him we got Savali and you got Plesac. So you got guys who are ready to come in and pitch in big spots. The wild card series, what it gives is one thing: hope. Because if I'm being truthful, and I think the Indians still have a great shot to win it all, what I'm seeing from the Yankees early on is scary. If that team plays that well all year long, I mean, we need a wild card series because we need someone just to get hot for 2 games and just knock that team the fuck out, because they look very poised and look ready to go. And that gives a team like hope, the Indians, I think, a lot. I love this. It's a big win for the Indians. Big win for us.
They're going to flip the switch. They're going to flip the switch.
Gosh, I just
it's going to happen. Calling it.
Well, I'll tell you, I love the new playoff format, and I think it's great for the Indians. It's great. Again, if they happen to lose tonight, it takes pressure off the Indians for that game, and the Indians need that. And I think it'll help them out a lot.
At home against the Royals for anyone, although I don't, for anyone who's watching live. If you're not watching live, then you'll already know what happened with the game. So there you go.
Well, exactly. So here's the big thing for this season. From what I can already tell about this team, the batting in this lineup from last July even to this July is dramatic. Can you imagine, though, for people who forget how bad it was last April when they started last year compared to this year? It's just light years. The Indians' hitting's finally caught up with this team. I think the big thing with this team for this year, and you hate saying it, is once they figure out this bullpen, the only thing that gives me hope about this is they have options. You're going to have starters that can come out and play through the bullpen.
That's what I like.
They like that with Pleco already. In a playoff series, you're not going to pitch 5, so Savali or Plesac's going to come back. So you have options for the bullpen down the road, which I like a lot. I'll be honest, outside that, I like Karinchak a lot. People know this who listens to this show. I love Karinchak. Great. Wickren, I think, will be okay to good. Simber's going to be Simber. But the Oliver Perez's, the Brad Hands, I'm going to be wringing my hands. That stuff makes me nervous.
Well, this is where, Andy, they're going to have to, 1, be able to preserve a lead, and 2, be able to build on a lead. Those are the two things. I mean, it really is going to come down to the offensive side of the ball and being able to add runs, and also that bullpen really. If they have, that's going to be the killer. That's going to be the disappointing thing. If it does go bad, if it does go wonky this season, what's going to be the most difficult thing to deal with and the hardest pill to swallow is to watch leads get squandered, because that's the way it's going to happen. You're going to watch them come out of the gates. You're going to watch them have leads, and you're going to watch them lose leads and lose games if they can't get the bullpen figured out and if they can't have their closer figured out. And that is going to be gut-wrenching to watch, let alone 162 to watch for 60 games.
The guys to watch out for are Cam Hill. He's a new guy that's been around the Indians organization. He made the team. He's had an impressive spring. I think people are really going to like him. Francona, as you can tell, is thinking good things for him this year. I don't think big things, but I think good things. Dominic Leone, Pleco we already talked about, and then we mentioned all the rest. Felmatan, you're going to see coming in and out. But really, again, on this team, and he's a nice man. He's doing good things for the community. Brad Hand, I know they keep saying, and they keep remarking in the press, well, he's just gearing up. He's just trying to get revved up for the season. I guess I got to be honest, Jared. I think he looks so different and so slow at times to the mound.
If Tito felt that way, he wouldn't have Karinchak wouldn't have been closing these last couple games.
I think Karinchak going in the 9th inning is not just a coinkydink. I think he's going in there because they're getting him revved up to become the closer. I agree. I mentioned that to Jared the other night. It's not just a coincidence. It isn't like that they're just doing that. They're trying to get him ready. Hamilton said it on the broadcast when they were playing at home. I mean, he's throwing. I mean, there's a couple pitches Brad Hamilton's throwing in the low 80s, high 70s. It's alarming. He's a closer. Hey, if you're a starter, we have all seen the days of Tomlin. You can do that stuff as a closer. Jared's alarming. It's alarming. You just hope. I keep hearing this from all the Indians internal. Hey, he's just getting revved up to the season. Well, here we are.
I don't believe it, and I don't know. What do you say to test this? I think the only way that I would even try it and test it at this point with him, if they are where they are with him, is he's got to come in relief after whoever the starting pitcher is, and see what he can do for a few batters. I think that's the only way to safely test things. I don't see any other way. I don't know how you put him in the pressure of closing right now. I don't know how you throw him in the deep end. I just don't. I don't know how you throw him in the deep end.
7th and 8th innings is what I would do too.
Yeah.
I just think right now, again, they keep saying he's going to get revved up. Okay. But I've seen enough baseball to know I think there's something off here. I don't think it's him not being, he's just getting into the season. I think some of this is truthfully Brad Hand.
Oh,
meaning this is what we're going to see this year.
Yep.
I just don't think I don't think it's any less more than that.
Hey, I'd love to be proved wrong, and
hey, we both will do. But I have very big reserves about Brad Hand.
Yep.
I think that's really the only question. Now, to the rest of the team, I think it's there. I have been so blown away, as I mentioned, by the lineup. The defense is going to be well improved. Hernandez is a good glove at second. We already know what the other three can do. Santana, Lindor, and J-Ram. And Perez was, won a Gold Glove. So look, I mean, you have a great infield. The outfield, especially in games where Zimmer can play, is going to be great. People need to remember their extra inning games this year. There's a guy going to be on second base to start every inning. So keep that in mind this year. That'll be exciting. I think the bigger thing this year for the Indians is, and whichever team is going to go through is, how do you go through the dinks and dunks of a normal season and COVID-19? You're going to have guys that get hurt. You're going to have guys that come in and out. The only thing I can tell you from afar, in a weird way, outside of relief, the Indians are in an interesting way, kind of, I would argue, maybe deep in some positions, which I've never felt that in even 16 and 17. Yeah. The Indians have some depth where it's like, okay, Naquin does get rehurt again, and Luplo's been having back issues. All right, Zimmer, go. Like, I'd be fine with that. And it's not as alarming of a drop as it's been in past years.
No, I think you worry maybe a little bit about catcher and Perez. I mean, that's it, really, right?
Catcher's thin, and then if Karinchak gets hurt, don't call this show because I don't know. The other thing, I don't want to pour too much negative water, but there's one story that we need to talk about, which we haven't talked about enough.
Yeah.
There's been tons of stories about Kluber being great and Kluber being ready to rock and roll this year.
I don't want to talk about that. Why are you fucking bringing that up? I don't give a shit.
We need to talk about it.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
Yeah, we do.
No, we don't.
He didn't sign a free agent contract.
This is the same conversation, though, Andy. This is the same conversation. It was the right move.
Again, right trade. Clase being out, though, stings. Clase being out stings.
Well, I'll be honest, that right there would have been, I mean, that's what changes. You want to talk about changing the pitching.
If Clase's here, okay. Clase's not.
Woo!
All right. So we already hammered unbelievable. All these wild card series games are going to be on ESPN. There'll be one series on TBS, but everything will be on ESPN, which is great. For people, just one real quick piece of news. Mookie Betts signed a huge deal. The reason why we bring it up, 12-year, $365 million, so 365 days a year, he's going to get $1 million per day in 1 year for that contract. It's amazing. All that to be said for Mr. Betts, he's going to sign that big contract, and we all know what's looming in that. Well, what does that mean for Lindor? Because if I'm being truthful, I think Lindor's better than Betts. So how does that rate? How does that go forward? We'll see. But that honestly, rightly or wrongly, that does put a mark of what you're looking at here.
That's a clear I'm sorry. That's a clear dividing line there between markets. That's what that is.
Huge. It's huge. So Jared, but here's where it gets maybe good for the Indians. How does it change in the offseason? And can they throughout the year try to figure out a way to get Frankie? Look, they can't do that, but can they get in the galaxy to negotiate? That's the question. Because I'm going to hammer this. They've got to find a way to sign him. I know they probably won't. They've got to find a way to sign him, though.
I don't know what you even offer because I personally don't want a 10 to 12 year. I don't. I know. I want a 4 year. I want a 4 year, maybe 5 year.
It's an alarmingly big contract.
I want right. And that's, and you know what? It's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? You're setting a precedent that is not A, sustainable, B, even approachable for other markets, and C, not going to work out for you because I'm sorry. 12 year for Betts. No, no,
I agree.
No.
So that's
dumb decisions. Oh, dumb decisions. Whatever. Dumb though. Dumb.
We'll predict where the Indians go at the end of the show. So I'm going to jump ahead real quickly to the NFL. Yeah. There have been some updates today. It sounds like they are very, very close on a deal. There's rumors as part of this deal between the NFLPA and the NFL owners that what they're going to. Well, here's the key thing from the money perspective. Because they have announced that they are going to take a money loss, which is expected. I mean, you're not going to have fans in the stands for most of these games. Maybe you have I mean, they're going to lose money. What the NFL has done, which I thought the owners, in a way, from the money negotiating, which was very fair, they said, look, we're going to take, we think, a $70 to $100 million hit. We will not take that hit next year, mean, they're not going to drop the salary cap down $100 million. What they said is we'll divide those losses into a 7 to 10 year period. So it's spread out. So that way the salary cap doesn't fluctuate. And if we somehow make that money up between year to year, we'll erase what money's lost and it'll be put back into the salary cap. That was very fair by the owners. They're basically saying, look, we're predicting this loss. We're not going to just take that off the books on 2021. We will divide it evenly between a 7 to 10 year period. And what we'll do is if we make up that money through revenue profits, we'll take that off the books and the salary cap goes back. And then you go back from there.
They're going to have to do those things. They're going to have to be fair. They're going to have to come to the table. They're going to have to be proactive, which is the opposite of what the NFL is ever. Again, at the speed of corporate. There's no way that the NFL is going to get away with trying to dink and dunk around. They fuck around too much, and they're not even going to have a season at all. I don't think you already see the precedent being set with players flat out. They are not messing around. They will hit social media. They will go after the discussions. They will go after ownership. They will do it, and they will not relent. And we're already seeing that right now. It was only last week before this stuff came out. Only last week that we had players like Jarvis Landry hitting Twitter and going, hey, let's go. Figure shit out. Do it now. Don't play games. Myles Garrett was another one. Players across the league were being already right off the top. Let's go. Don't do the shit that Major League Baseball did. Don't do this. Let's not play games. Let's do this right. And that's what we're seeing right now. They're making the concessions that need to be made. They are taking the painful hits that need to be taken care of early. Now let's see if they can figure out how to get these guys on the field and do it safely, because those guys are being vocal about that too. They will not dick around with their health. Well,
they're going to, because it sounds like they're already agreed. So, I mean, I'm going to say, actually, the NFL has done a far better job of this than MLB did.
Yeah.
I mean, not even. In fact, this is more similar to what we saw from the NBA. The NBA and the NFL have handled this so well. MLB need to take notes, because the owners in both the NBA and NFL knew how to handle this and knew what to do.
Manfred doesn't seem like the type of guy who takes notes. All I'm saying.
I think he's having a bad run, to say the least. So all that to be said, Jared and I are going to do a podcast on Monday. Browns training camp opens up on Tuesday, July 28th. So we'll come back. We'll preview. There's already some stuff starting to come out. So the Browns, along with every team in the NFL, starts on Tuesday. Only the Texans and Chiefs are starting earlier because they play in that Thursday night opener, which as of now is still on the books. So they're going to open up a few days earlier. So we're going to do that. Real quickly, what are some predictions, and we'll wrap this show up. Nick Francona, thank you so much. Did a great job tonight. I am very excited about this season. Really, really excited about the season. I think we'll do a 95 remembrance show, Jared, on Monday.
Yeah.
Because of the show being so long. But here's a quick thing about this year. Enjoy this. I think the Indians are going to be a lot of fun. Even if they aren't, I think just having sports back will be great. This team I got to be honest, I've been reading all of this stuff in the last month. The Indians have such a positive vibe going in this year that it's so easy already to want to root for these guys, on top of we already will. And then when you see stuff like Frankie Lindor put out something on Instagram last night, talk about how important it is for him to win a championship in Cleveland. The guys and girls out there, this team is so lovable, so much fun. They represent us as fans so well. Listening to Nick Francona, you can hear Terry in his voice at times, even when they don't agree. Are the Indians the best team in baseball talent-wise? No, they're not. But is this team going to be fun to root for, and they're going to be in these games? I think they are, yes. Do I think they're going to make the playoffs? Yes. Do I think they're going to be in there scrapping away? I do. I really think this team has a chance to go far. I actually think this is the year for the Indians to even get back in the reins there. I am not as afraid about the Twins as I was last year. Jake Odorizzi is already out with an injury. He's a starting pitcher for the Twins. He's already out. He's going to be on the IL for a little bit. So, Jared, there's opportunities here early on for the Indians, and I just like the vibe of this team going into the season a lot. I really
outside of the bullpen and the back end, there are a handful of players that have opportunities to go to the next level.
Yep.
That have the opportunity to level up and make themselves either an everyday starter or put their names in there for, guys that you feel comfortable throwing in at any given moment. There is another level that some of these players can reach And I really hope that they get the best out of some of these guys this year. You know that you talk about them not being necessarily the best lineup, the best team. If some of these guys level up like they could, you might be looking at a team that can go on a big run. They're built in a way where that is possible. You just hope that you see more of that development and less of the youthful mistakes, the youthful side of things.
Again, depth, I think, is going to play a key role this year. And the Indians have started off on the right gate. They really don't have any injuries. Even outside of Luplow and Naquin banged up, that's really all you hear about. Okay? The Indians have good depth.
Yeah.
That is going to play a key role this year. And it's going to be a big role. And I think the Indians actually have that this year in a lot of areas. And even with the bullpen, if there's one area in this game that we've all learned throughout the years, and there's one thing about this organization, don't be surprised if they make a trade towards the end of August to get someone in here to help that bullpen. Don't be surprised, because there's going to be guys out there to be had. And that's what the Indians, I think, are going to have to do at some point. But that's not now. And even with that said, they have enough parts. I'm very excited about this year. I'm thinking big things. I think the Indians win the Central.
Hey, Dan Monis on Facebook asked earlier, what name does Nick like? That is a question we should have asked, and we did not. What a glaring question we could have put out there. We should have asked him. I don't know. Nick, are you still with the Spiders, Andy?
Spiders, Clevelanders, which no one's going to ever name them that.
Clevelanders.
I love them.
I like Cleveland Baseball Club.
I could do that. Buckeyes, I really like.
I know there's so many people that don't like the Buckeyes name, though. I'm with you. I get it. I still got to grab my Buckeye shirt. Apparently, it was mailed. I gotta get that.
Guardians wouldn't bother me either.
The Guardians. This is the one case where I think I can buy into that. As much as I've made my jokes about not really having any.
I think all that.
For it.
I think all that's fine. I just. I again, all those names I just mentioned are fine. I'm sure there'll be others I'll be mentioned. I'll be fine with. There's some names I don't like the Rockers. I don't like the Rocks.
No, I don't want corny. I don't want corny Rock and Roll Hall of Fame shit.
Yeah,
I love the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I just don't like the whole. I don't want a guitar on the field. I didn't even like that for the All-Star break. Really. I'm not that one. It's not.
I'm okay. See, here's the difference. That's a logo. That's cool. It's not the team name.
I know.
And Cleveland is the home of rock and roll according to Huey Lewis. So I get it. And the Hall of Fame itself. So I get it. And
from what I've seen, I believe him.
I do too. Fit to be square. I think so. That's we should have asked Nick what his dream name would have been. Time will tell on that stuff. We'll have Nick back on again. Enjoy the season. I really think, like I said, I've been watching enough to see. I've seen some different teams play outside the Yankees, which I think are just. Sadly, they're fucking good. The Indians really have a shot against any of these other teams. And even with that said, the Yankees and the Indians, I'll take the Indians any day of the week. I think the Indians have something special this year. I really do. You can feel that special vibe.
We are brought to you by Waiting for Next Year. Check them out, Original Cleveland Sports Reporting at waitingfornextyear.com. Also, don't forget, follow us on Twitter at CLE and Beyond, at CLE and Beyond. You can always shoot us an email, Andy and Jared at gmail.com, Andy and Jared, JARID at gmail.com. And on Facebook, follow us, facebook.com/Cleveland and Beyond. Whew. Andy, final thoughts besides the fact that the Indians can make a run, and we both agree with that.
Talk to you Monday. Browns focused on the top. We'll relive the Royal series for a little bit. Looking forward. We're going to remember the 95 Indians as well towards the end of the show. Roll Tribe. Roll Tribe.
And thanks again to our guest, Nick Francona, for coming on. Indian skipper's son, Nick Francona. Great conversation. Can't wait to have him back. He's Andy Billman. I'm Jared Watson. Andy and Jared, Cleveland and Beyond. Everybody, take care. I'm real excited. What are we looking at? 40 minutes? Go Tribe. Talk soon.
I just want to congratulate Jared Watson's internet. Great job.
Upgrade, baby. Upgrade. Yep. I was going to make what's that movie? The guy's name is Upgrade, that movie.
I forget.
Idiocracy.
Yes.
With Upgrade spelled with 3 Ds for a triple dose of. I can't remember what to say. All right. Anyways, it's stupid. Idiocracy. Great movie. Wow. I should watch that one again too right now. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.